In the video game industry, there are two languages that are far more prominent than any others: English and Japanese. This is due, in large part, to just how massive those markets are, and how localization and marketing teams tend to fall in line to be sure to hit those massive demographics. However, video games are made in many different countries around the world, and in so many more languages than just these two. But while these may become huge hits in their home territories, they may not ever see the light of day elsewhere, most likely for budget reasons. It's a shame that these titles don't often get talked about, as they're just as worthy of attention as any other. So today, we're taking a look at some of the best video games available that haven't been brought to the English or Japanese speaking market. And if you're able to understand any of these languages, you should definitely seek out these games if you can. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 great video games that aren't in English or Japanese. Number 10, Age of Wanderer, Korean. We may not be looking at Japan today, but the whole of Asia is a powerhouse in the video game world. So for now, we turn our attention to South Korea and the 2003 PC title, Age of Wanderer. The game is based on the K-drama Rustic Period, which focuses on the life of a real-life former mob leader turned politician and the portion of mid-19th century history when Japanese military forces were occupying Korea. Action follows two different protagonists: Do-han Kim, the leader of the Umi gang and son of a famous general, and Sirasoni, who is a warrior and considered to be the greatest fighter of all time. In order to oppose the invading threat, the two have decided to take to the streets in order to fight for the rights of their fellow Korean citizens and restore peace to the area. Eventually, their ultimate goal is to fight through all of the opposing forces and take care of the Honmachi clan, the source of most of the issues thanks to their ranks being full of thugs, gangsters, and other bad guys. The game is fairly standard as far as side-scrolling beat-em-ups go, but the tie into an existing drama is certainly an interesting twist. Number 9, Portugal 1111, A Conquista de Suri, Portuguese. Another PC exclusive this time around, but now we're moving about as far away from Korea as we can get with Portugal 1111, A Conquista de Suri, which, unsurprisingly, is a Portugal exclusive title. This RTS game is quite similar to the popular historic strategy series Age of Empires, allowing players to strategically take control of historical events and tasking them with forming, expanding, and maintaining the forces of their chosen empire. In this particular historical case, the setting is that of the Portuguese Reconquista, when the Christians were fighting against the invading Moorish forces from the 8th century all the way up until the late 15th century. The game was produced in partnership with the municipality of Suri, which is situated in the western part of the country, as well as with the blessing of historians from the University of Coimbra, in order to bring a bit of attention to the time period and make sure the title was accurate. Like Age of Wanderer, Portugal 1111 may be a fairly standard example of the genre it's a part of, but it does have a special claim to fame, as it is the first commercial video game that was completely produced and designed in the country of Portugal. Guess it's fitting for a historical game to make history itself. Number 8, Messenger of the Gods, Czech. Czech title, Messenger of the Gods, or Posel Bahu if you want to get actual title about this, is a first-person adventure game and follows archaeological expert Stanislav Novotny, who has set off on an adventure in order to investigate a Mayan mystery. Gameplay relies heavily on logic puzzles and takes a lot of inspiration from the popular LucasArts Indiana Jones games, with fully voiced dialogue and a huge range of environments to explore. It was, at the time of release, one of the most successful Czech games, selling over 1,500 units, which was considered, and I quote, relatively enough for Czech conditions, whatever that means. Though it was this well received, some did find that some of the puzzles were amongst the most difficult they'd ever come up against, but it was perfect for fans of brain teasers. Later, Messenger of the Gods was remade and released in multiple markets as Nibiru Age of Secrets, so the game did finally get a bit of a chance to shine in other countries, though it wasn't especially well received as this iteration, so maybe it wasn't really worth it in the end. If you do want a chance to play this one though, and don't know or can't learn Czech, you do at least have an option. Just debatable whether it's a good one. Number 7, La Abadía del Crimen, Spanish. Originally meant to be called The Name of the Rose, after the Umberto Eco book of the same name, the title of 1987 adventure game La Abadia del Crimen had to be changed after the developers couldn't acquire the rights, meaning they were forced to opt for what had been the book's working title instead. Players take control of the Friar, Fra William, and Novice, Adso, and guide them through the isometric mystery as they hunt for a missing monk, whilst also trying to stay on top of their daily tasks over the course of the game's 7 days. If players forget about their monastery tasks, the Novice will remind them and even guide them to where they need to go, because if they aren't careful, their obedience level will be reduced to 0, meaning they'll be asked to leave the abbey, ending the game and leaving the mystery unsolved. The game was a relatively decent commercial success and has gained quite a cult following in Spain, becoming so popular that it was even considered one of the best ZX Spectrum games of all time, and even got a commemorative postage stamp. Even with this much love for the title, there has been no official releases outside of the country. Guess that means unless you speak Spanish, you'll have to read the book if you want to experience the story. Number 6. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Takedown. Missions in Korea. Korean. We're going back around the world to another continent now, and revisiting a country we've already been to on this list. Released only in South Korea, Tom Clancy's Missions in Korea is quite similar to other titles in the series, which really isn't surprising, as this game specifically takes much of what was present in Rainbow Six Rogue Spear, which came out in all markets 2 years prior, and updates it, adding South Korean operatives, new maps, and weapons specific to the country, as well as being about half as long. It's also not canon to the continuity of the Rainbow Six series, and is actually set in an alternate dimension where the expansions of Rogue Spear never happened. The game follows a South Korean special response team, who are responding to attacks by the terrorist group ATX. Soon it becomes obvious that the group also has connections in the Yakuza, and they've been smuggling drugs between Korea and Japan, which leads the team on a more complicated set of missions than they initially anticipated. It may not be all that different to other Rainbow Six titles, but it is a shame for fans that this one has never been seen outside of South Korea. Number 5. SüperCan. Turkish. So far, a lot of the games that we've been talking about have been a bit on the older side, but now we're taking a look at something that is also a decade old, but is at least a bit more recent. Originally announced in 2009, SüperCan wasn't released until 2 years later, and follows the protagonists as they attempt to clean up the scattered rubbish in the world and stop the various robots that they'll encounter on their travels, as they're going around trashing up the earth and demolishing the forests. The game was a big hit in its home nation of Turkey, reaching a total of 2 million players within the first 8 months of release. It even managed to score a deal with Marvel, meaning that players were able to meet up with the likes of Spider-Man, Iron Man, and the Hulk, and have them help in their efforts to fight off the enemy robots. Unfortunately for anyone wanting to get in on the action nowadays, the studio behind the title was closed down in 2017, and the game has been taken down as a result, meaning this incredibly popular title has no chance of getting an audience elsewhere. Number 4. The Legend of Sword and Fairy series. Chinese. One of the most iconic RPG series of all time, despite being exclusive for almost all of its entries, The Legend of Sword and Fairy, which is also known as simply Sword and Fairy or Chinese Paladin, and is based on Chinese mythology and features a whole host of immortal heroes. Over the years, the series has got many spin-offs, web series, comics, loads of merchandise, and even stage productions since the very first of the games released in 1995. It's even got into other genres, including card games, and even the extremely diametrically opposed business simulation games, and has been incredibly popular in Taiwan and China ever since the very first game in the series. Each game has a specific theme that it sticks to, using this for both the plot and the various character story arcs throughout the course of the given title. These range from the generic and stereotypical ideas of destiny to concepts like togetherness, love, and forgiveness, though some of the games, specifically more recent ones, have been released in other territories. The vast majority of them were only ever available in Taiwan and mainland China, meaning that much of the history of this iconic series is inaccessible to anyone who doesn't speak the language. Number 3. Asmodeus Tajemny Kraju Tanior. Czech. from mythology to supernatural beings now, as we head back to the Czech Republic to take a look at the 1997 action RPG Asmodeus Tajemny Kraj Rutaniol. The title translates to Asmodeus, Mysterious Country of Rutaniol, and over the years of its development, it morphed from a text adventure into a point-and-click game, heavily inspired by the likes of Myst and Stonekeep. Players explore tunnels and attack enemies as they progress through the story and improve their stats, which in turn allows them to take on harder challenges and explore more areas in order to progress the plot. The game follows Mott, apprenticed to a monk, who wants to summon the ancient titular god Asmodeus in order to save the world, whatever exactly he means by that, which definitely doesn't sound suspect in the slightest and shouldn't set off any alarm bells. Though people couldn't agree fully on just what the merits of the title were, it was generally praised for its gameplay, atmosphere and writing, with some saying that it was a worthy competitor to any of the games it drew inspiration from. It may look a little rough now, but it is a gem nonetheless. Number 2, Franco, The Crazy Revenge, Polish. 1994 side-scrolling beat-em-up Franco the Crazy Revenge was hyped up when it was first announced in its sole release country of Poland, as it was one of the earliest Amiga titles that had been developed there. Thankfully, it was fully able to live up to the expectations that had been set for it, becoming a smash hit and earning a huge cult following, along with a whole slew of accolades from local publications. Gameplay is most similar to that found in Final Fight, and players are able to choose from either the eponymous Franco or his friend Alex, who, spoiler alert, is heavily implied to be dead, and guide them through the streets of Szczecin in order to chase down baddie Klotzek, who beat them up in the beginning of the game. Off the back of Franco's success, a spiritual successor was released, again just in Poland, Doman Gazeki Odana, which was a slightly more serious, fantasy-inspired title. But despite efforts throughout the years, the game didn't get a true sequel until 2023, with the Steam release of Skinny and Franco Fists of Violence. Better late than never, I suppose. And number 1, Abracadabra, Spanish. Released in 1988, Spanish game Abracadabra, not to be confused with the 1983 title of the same name, follows the knight Clos de Eldorf as he tries to escape from Queen Zalesia, who cursed him in a fit of jealousy, turning him into a ghost and trapping him with her until he confesses his love, in what is probably the least healthy start of a relationship I've ever heard of. The game is split into 2 separate parts. In the first, Clos has to hunt down the witch to break the curse and escape the prison, while in the second he tries to find Princess Violetta in the near Greenwald Forest. The gameplay is similar to a TTRPG, with things progressing from move to move in turn-based fashion, and is presented primarily as a text adventure, though images will show how the world has changed and where exactly the player is as they progress. Despite its fairly bizarre setup, Abracadabra was greatly praised when it came out, with some claiming it was one of the best adventure games in the Spanish market, and many more praising its world-building and engaging gameplay. Just, please don't take any tips from the Queen to use in your personal life. That's no good.